Welcome back to the Place We Find Ourselves podcast. I'm Adam Young, and I am delighted to be joined by not one, but two guests today, both doctors, Dr. Steve Call, Dr. Dan Allender, the authors of the soon-to-be-released book titled The Deep-Rooted Marriage, Cultivating Intimacy, Healing, and Delight. It comes out January 21st. Gentlemen, it's good to have you.
Thank you, Adam. Such a privilege to be with you.
I don't think I've heard somebody actually say the whole title. So that was sweet. Thank you.
I know sometimes we forget the subtitle, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lovely subtitle, and we will get into, over the course of the next 45 minutes, the words intimacy, healing, and delight, I'm sure. But let's start here. Steve, when you think of someone reading through this book that you have co-authored, what's your hope for the reader of the book? Like, if you could wave a magic wand, what would happen in the reader's heart as they read The Deep-Rooted Marriage?
It's a great question, Adam. It was such a privilege for Dan and I to write together. And I think of Dan as along the way as my mentor in so many different ways. And one of the hopes that I think I hold and we hold really is that the reader would gain a deeper awareness of how their past is part of the present, particularly in their marriage dynamic. I think for many couples, and for Lisa and I in our marriage, that often comes as a surprise. There's a wondering of what just happened. Maybe an interaction between the two of us that sometimes doesn't really make sense. And I think part of our hope, my hope particularly, is that the reader really would, from the beginning to the end, gain a deeper awareness, a deeper understanding of how their origin story, their family of origin story, which you spend so much good time talking about and teaching around, there would just be a depth to that understanding that maybe wasn't cultivated before, maybe wasn't made as aware of as before. I think for so many couples, the sense of feeling or being stuck is such a prominent experience. And part of our hope is that there would be clarity around what is this stuckness about? What is it connected to? I also think, that subtitle that includes the word hope, it really is meant to be a hopeful read for individuals and couples, either individually or together, that I think as a couple, as they work through it together, the level of intimacy, connection that can develop throughout what we offer, I think is our hope for the reader.
So part of what I'm hearing your hope is for some compassion for the reader on their own story, and therefore compassion for why their marriage feels the way it feels.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a significant part of story work, right? Is what is this connected to in my own story? And if I'm unaware of what that is connected to, it's so difficult to be able to connect to what's happening for my partner, for my spouse.
Yes.
So I think that the collaborative awareness is part of our hope.
Okay. So what I've done is I've gone through and found some of my favorite quotes from this book, and I want to just ask you to expand on some of them, elaborate on some. And the first, Dan, you wrote in chapter 1. Let me read you what you wrote, and then I'm going to be a little confrontational. You're inviting the reader and you say, dare to ask, what do I dream for my partner and me? How might we step into transformation, freedom, and vibrancy? Who would I like to be in moments of tension with my partner? What would a more curious, honest, compassionate, and patient version of me look like? So, lovely questions. They throw me, the reader, into the realm of hope. And for many of us, hope that things can be different in a 20-year marriage, for example, feels foolish. Many of us have settled. We've settled for some version of, I guess the ache I feel in my marriage is just part of living in a broken world. So if that is where the listener is, Dan, what would you respond to someone who's feeling a war with hope in their marriage?
Well, thank you for the confrontation. The answer in part is if you're not at times looking at your spouse and going, you're a taste of hell, then you're not only not honest, but you're not loving. So the reality is that I know no one who has brought me more of a taste of heaven and a taste of hell. Just lunch an hour ago, I looked at my wife and I said, I love you and would die for you, but I don't like you right now. And she was like, well, if you liked me, given the fact I am really angry and mean, there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, oh my God, that was refreshing. Wow, that was like, I thought we were going to have a fight, but I now like you. I don't like you, but I really like you because there's something so good about just two human beings, or in this case, her, being honest and now being able to restore. So often we've got this chaos or we've got this distance, but the idea that we could dream redemption on our own behalf, but on behalf of our spouse, and actually taste a few moments of what it means to repair. I'm telling you, it was the best part of my lunch.
Hmm. So you brought up Becky, and you talk about Becky a fair bit. Becky writes some in this, as does your wife Lisa. Steve, they contribute. And one of the things you write about Becky early on in the book, Dan, is you say that Becky was fascinated by my stories, just like my mom and dad had been. But she offered the benefit of never needing me to fix or soothe her. She was utterly intact and independent, yet thrilled with my playful attention. And then here's the sentence that got me. Our past trauma carved us to fit so perfectly, it looked like an act of God. The only problem was we didn't know we had trauma or that what we each wanted was redemption from the past. So this reminds me of what Steve said earlier. What do you mean when you say that each of you wanted redemption from the past?
Well, I think it's one of the most important sentences for me personally, and that is, I want redemption today. I mean, I'm all for the coming of Jesus. Advent is glorious, but I want him to come back. And in that, for all things to be restored, for all things to be renewed and reconciled. And if I want that at a global level, I sure want it with the one human being that I'm in this one flesh relationship with. So, in that sense, what I'm asking for is I need redemption and I have it. But again, redemption is a past tense, present tense, future tense word. So, in all regards, I want my wounded heart, my struggles that come largely in the context of past abuse and developmental trauma, I want that restored. And again, there are a few moments, few hours, a lot of banality and at times boredom, but more often than not, those few moments where things are as they were meant to be on earth as it is in heaven. I'm telling you, that's better than sliced bread.
Steve, what's it like for you as you listen?
Uh, it at times feels like poetry, honestly. I think Dan has such a gift in the way he communicates desire and the way he communicates hope on behalf of marriages. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been our foundation of friendship from the very beginning, is that we are both deeply, deeply committed to redemption, heaven on earth to some degree. And part of the way I think we wrote together was a reflection of our friendship, but also a reflection of our deep hope for marriages, yes, for our own, but also for each other's. And I think that's what was so attractive in our friendship early on, was Dan's deep, deep commitment to his wife and his faithfulness in the way he honors their marriage and the way he speaks about marriage. I think also, what we have maybe more recently really tried to encourage both readers and listeners around the imagery of God, and how I think part of what is so essential and some of what we want our readers to be aware of is we represent the image of God on behalf of our spouse. And I don't think that gets acknowledged enough in this culture, in the world in which we live, the world in which we read, the world in which we teach. And that is both, I think, a privilege and maybe something other than privilege. That therein lies, I think, the difficulty for many marriages is I'm not sure I want that responsibility. I'm not sure I want that privilege. But I think part of, the redemptive quality of who you and I get to be on behalf of our spouse, I think that's been I just think our foundation in the way that we try to really communicate the hope and desire of what marriage is meant to be.
The book is absolutely a hopeful book, but it's not an unrealistic book. So, for example, in chapter 3, Steve, you author it, and you write, you're very clear. You say most couples struggle in one or more of the following ways: a lack of delight, loneliness, contempt, and feeling stuck. Now, I'd love to hear about all four, but in the interest of time, I get to choose because I'm the host. I have the power. So can you say more about this? And this is not autobiographical, this question, but can you say more about the struggle of feeling stuck? Why do we get stuck in these marriages? And what is the way forward?
Yeah, I think for us, for Lisa and I obviously we cannot speak on behalf of all marriages, but I think for the most part, often the sense of feeling stuck is connected to something in the past, what we might call reenactment, something that happened from the past that gets played out in the present. So there's the wheels just spin. What's going on here? Well, why is this happening? And often it's because of something in our own story, particularly around maybe the realm of unaddressed trauma. For many of us, that's not necessarily a newer term, but I think where couples get stuck is the way in which they view their story, their family of origin trauma maybe, as something in the past. How could that be part of the present? But the stuckness is because it keeps trying to be reenacted or replayed. For example, last night, Lisa was busy all weekend. She had friends over for a Christmas party for like 3 days, like this 72-hour event. And I, for the most part, was good, meaning it was great fun for her. I was able to celebrate it, encourage her, be a part of it with her. But there came a point toward the end when Lisa said, "Oh, I also have to go away for part of the day tomorrow," which I didn't know about. And I got really like bothered, irritated, frustrated. This is a reflection of where we have been stuck often is when one of us is preoccupied or busy with something or someone else, part of my story, part of her story gets triggered. It gets activated, meaning part of where I go, part of what I feel is maybe I'm not that important. Maybe I don't matter. And so that has been a stuck place for us often throughout the 37, 38 years of marriage, is we can get stuck in this narrative of what's happening. Something about our encounter allowed me, invited me, prompted me to feel like I don't matter. I'm not important. And I think that's an example of, if we're not aware of what that's connected to, that's part of where we just have this reenactment over and over again. That historically, we would go round and round in that conversation. The conversation only lasted this time maybe 10 minutes. In the past, it might have lasted 2 hours. Lisa was able to hear, how I was impacted by what she said. She was able to respond kindly without a defensive response. And that's obviously, it lasted longer than what I'm describing to you. But I think for many couples, that sense of feeling stuck is there's no way out. We don't know what to do in this moment. And I think our hope in the writing was to create some clarity around how do we navigate those stuck moments well? Not just navigate them, but navigate them well. What's being triggered for her, for him? What is that connected to? I think feeling stuck is often what's missing is this lack of curiosity around what's happening. What's happening for me? What's happening for you? That is, if we could say one maybe significant contributor to becoming unstuck, it's that. It's that the awareness, yes, but also the cultivation of curiosity, that we would be kind enough to our own story, to be curious enough to ask the question of myself, ask the question of our partner or spouse, what's happening? What's that connected to? What was going on
Mm-hmm.
for you? Not out of a
Mm-hmm.
defensive posture or out of a blaming posture, but really out of a true curiosity posture.
And part of what I'm hearing you assume is that there's a reason we're stuck.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's not just by chance.
Right? And that's actually good news. Like there's a
Yes.
reason my marriage feels the way it does.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing we want when we have a medical issue, the last thing we want when we go see a doctor is, him or her saying, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I mean, we long to be aware of what's going on, what's happening. Why is that happening to me?
Mhm.
It's actually a hopeful direction to say there's some clarity. If we can stay long enough in the process, there's some clarity of what that is connected to.
And when it's mutual, so that it's not just, I know what's wrong, it's you. And it's actually us, me. And so when we know that there's this intersection of both histories playing out in the present that can be engaged at a different level than resolved, but felt, touched, engaged in a different form, that just, I'm looking forward to seeing my wife this afternoon.
Mm. Steve, you introduce a term that my wife shared with me. She read the book before I did, that I had never heard in chapter 5, and it's the term attunement trauma. And that really moved me. What is it, and how does it play out in our marriages, Steve?
Hmm. That phrase actually became more clear or clearer as I began to write about attunement. I mean, you've done wonderful teaching and writing about attunement, Adam, and I think one of the most essential features of attunement trauma is really this, essentially lack of attunement, but lack of presence, particularly from our attachment figure, which is now in marriage, our spouse, our partner. And I think of it and I imagine it. It really is a turning away, a sense of being turned away from.
Mm-hmm.
That there's somehow the face, the body communicates something along the lines of you're not important, maybe you don't matter, your need is too much. There's something that you're asking, requiring of me that I cannot bear. And so there's often this bodily posture that just is literally a turning away from.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if we can all just stay present to that just for a moment, that's one of the most debilitating moments in any relational dynamic,
Yeah.
particularly in marriage, is when our partner spouse turns away, when there's something that communicates your need, your expression, your desire, something of too much, I cannot bear it. So I think that's part of the trauma associated with attunement is literally misattunement. There's just a missing of a presence. There's a missing of attuned response. There's a missing of, I get it. I could see that was hard for you. Oh yeah, you seem really upset. You seem really bothered. The kinds of things we craved from a very early moment in our life is that caregiver's response of, I get it. I can see that was really painful for you. I can see that was really hard for you. You seem really upset. Natural things that we would crave. The attunement trauma comes when there's a sense of void. They're missing. Maybe they're so inconsistent that we cannot bear them. We cannot remember them. So I think it just became more clear in the writing actually of, oh, this is what's happening for so many couples. Yes. There's something around when you turn away from me that communicates something of, I am not important enough. I don't matter. Mm-hmm. Which when we talk about shame, that's, I think is essential in what it contributes is the shame narrative. But that sense of turning away from or being turned away from is almost unbearable.
Mm-hmm. As you move into chapter 6, Dan, you author it, you get really specific, not about, you get specific about the how to be in the tension, in the interaction. I want to read a quote from chapter 6. You write, Dan, I needed to create space for us to first address not how to resolve the problem, but how we wanted to be in the interaction. Now that sentence disturbed me in a good way. It was very orienting. But what do you mean, Dan, when when you're putting side by side resolution of the problem versus how we wanted to be with each other.
Well, let me just take us back to the context. We were going to a wedding. Becky was wearing a beautiful blue dress, and I put on the one suit I own, which happens to be blue. Well, she looked at me and she goes, "You can't wear that." I'm like, "Why?" Well, because people are going to think we're part of a bowling team. And I'm like, what do you got against bowling, let alone that we both wear? But it was like, I was so irritated and wanted just to go, look, get over it, or I'll just change. And then it dawned on me, we can resolve this. There's a place indeed for compromise. But the bottom line is, what's going on for you that the idea that two people wearing something of the shade of blue would provoke this for you? So just choosing, first and foremost, to go, look, we can resolve this, but I have a far more important question. What's going on, honey? Not accusing, like, what's going on? Or demanding she change, but just going, I don't get it. Can you help me understand what? Well, it's a story about her family and about what it was like to be in a stockbroker's family where when things were great, they were wealthy. When things were not, they were poor. And so buying clothing had so much trauma for her. I knew that story, but I didn't see how it was playing out in the moment. So as we sat, talked, there were tears on her part. She was angry because I was asking her to engage, yet on the other hand, relieved that I was not just looking for a solution. Look, all of us, all of us don't want conflict, but at some level, if we're willing to stay in it long enough to be able not to merely resolve, but to actually open up the doorway of what might be going on. So important what you said, Adam. There is a context, there is a reason, there are meanings to be explored. It took a lot more time than just getting ready to go to the wedding, but the byproduct was we literally held each other's hands at the wedding with a kind of like, this can happen. Yeah, it can happen. Now, I don't know about you all there standing up there making these promises, but nonetheless, we're sitting back, not so much like, hey, we did it, but more, oh, it is good. Good to be together, not just resolved.
Mm-hmm. Steve, there's this part in chapter 7 that's frankly, it's vulnerable writing on your part. And it's a couple paragraphs, but I want to read them and then I want to ask you about them. You're telling a story. You say the other day, Lisa and I sat together over coffee with the intention of bringing our full presence and focus to each other. We had only a few minutes to connect. Just after we sat down, though, our daughter in college called, and to my surprise, Lisa answered it. Notice, and then you're talking about shame. Notice here that shame can be sneaky and appear in the most benign moments. This was one of them for me. As Lisa started chatting, I got up and left the room, stinging with disappointment and rejection. Shame seared me, murmuring, "You don't matter to her. She'd pick someone else over you in a heartbeat, and even there is something fundamentally wrong with you." In the last paragraph, intellectually, I knew that this isn't true, but it honestly felt true, you write. Sometimes shame can override all logic and reasoning. When we feel something, it just feels true. So first, I just want to, honor you for your vulnerability and your honesty. But can you say more about what this moment was like for you, Steve? Because I want people to realize that shame happens to all of us, even to the authors that write about shame.
Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate you offering the kindness in response to that story. And frankly, that story and the others that are included are it's a really vulnerable process to reveal something of our story, but also something of the story of shame. that I think for me in that moment, it is one of many. I want to say hundreds and maybe thousands, honestly, of where shame has revealed itself, showed itself up, been felt, been experienced. Uh, Shame, I think, is we could say in different words, but I think it really is the underpinning and the foundation of so much of the tension, disconnection in marriage. And it has been true for Lisa and I. That if we could say something like what is the goal of shame, I think we could say shame's goal is actually disconnection. And that moment, that's exactly what it did, and that's exactly what it felt like. As you read and as we wrote, it's not logical sometimes, meaning it doesn't make sense. Like I'm getting up from the table, I'm walking into, I don't remember where I went, but somewhere else in the house, and I remember the response in that moment. It's really to hide. I mean, that's what I wanted. I was just undone by this, somehow the implication that Lisa would choose something or someone else over me. And I know that's not true. Cognitively in my left brain, I know that's not true. In my right brain, though, what I feel overrides it. Shame has this way of just consuming. It's not about extinguishing or getting rid of shame or not experiencing shame. I think what we're trying to highlight is that when we experience shame, what is it connected to? That's so key. That's such a critical feature of, can we be aware of what that's connected to? And for me, it is. It's connected to story. It's connected to, I didn't matter as a young boy. I wasn't important. I had to make meaning. I had to make value. I had to create my own worth. And so in that moment, when I'm hoping for connection with Lisa and she made the choice, which is fine. Like it's not about not wanting to talk to our daughter, but I think sometimes what is really difficult for me is I can't make sense of what I feel in the moment. And I think that's true for most of us. When we feel what we feel, we can't make sense of it in the moment. Maybe soon thereafter we can. That's where we need the help. That's where we need pursuit. That's where we need curiosity from the other. Hey, what happened? What's going on? And that has been Lisa's kind response over and over again is, hey, what happened? What was going on for you? But I think the assumption is, as we grow in this stage of life, like you said, sometimes the assumption is, as authors, writers, speakers, teachers, that we won't or don't experience shame. And I think that that feels really unkind to our body. Feels really unkind to the dynamic of what we carry. That it is a feature, is an experience, it's an emotion that we feel, and when we do, how do we respond to it? And I think that's the key, is highlighting, oh, it's there, and will we be kind enough to honor its presence?
Yes. And, as you were talking and linking it back to your experiences growing up, what came in my mind was just, you've got neurons. Like, people need to come to terms with the fact that we have neurons and that our brains are a function of our neural pathways. And so your neurons learned some things in your growing up years about somebody turning their face away when you had hope, desire, need. And when that got reenacted with your wife over coffee, now your neurons fired
Automatically.
And let that be, like, bring some compassion to the listeners who are making connections in their own lives. You have neurons.
Amen. Like that. We could say nothing else and we could just end there. I mean, honestly, I just think that's so profound, the reminder of how true that is. It happens. We are hardwired to have emotional responses because of our story.
Mm-hmm.
And when we respond, yes, having compassion toward how that was formed in our narrative, in our story.
Mm-hmm. Dan, I don't know if you wrote this sentence or if Steve did, but it's a moving sentence to me, and it's very simple. You write to the reader, you are not meant to suffer alone, and neither is your spouse. Now, what do you mean by this, and what is the alternative to suffering alone? If you're not meant to suffer alone, what are you inviting and hoping for the reader?
Well, let me go back. I don't know who wrote that, but I like the sentence, so I'm going to assume Steve wrote it.
No.
The sweetness about working with a dear friend is that it just isn't competitive. It's just so fun to be enjoying one another's. We fish a lot together, but when I get to watch him catch a fish, it's like I'm catching the same fish, and the same with regard to reading. So I think that's in part what I'm saying. We share joy together. We share suffering together. In any good relationship, there is that ability to weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice, and the ability to hold sorrow together and to hold delight and honor together. I just think it's some of the rarest realities we've got on this earth, because most of us are fairly comfortable just getting through the day, just functioning, doing the work, getting done, having a good meal, watch a little bit of TV, go to bed. So when we stop living a more distracted, but a more honest life, there's more complication, more death, but also more potential for resurrection. So, what I'm trying to get to is that there's nobody on this earth I should be weeping with more often than my wife, and nobody I should be laughing with as much as I do with my wife. And both of us, she has a history with a very angry mother. I have a history with a very deeply self-absorbed mother. She has a relationship with a eccentric, playful, but also distant father. I have one with a father who is hardly engaged even to speak a single word to me. Well, our histories are playing out. So when Steve says that he's struggling with his wife not engaging, I'm like, what a relief that would be to not have somebody engage. Wow. My mother's standing over me like a vulture, looking for what small piece of flesh she can devour. Oh my God, to have some a presence not notice me? Oh. So I married a woman who, in many ways, would not need me, not need to engage. And as I said earlier, it'll almost look like it was of God, not only not of God, but actually of the kingdom, not of goodness, but of evil. So when I begin to name, no, I'm a way more lonely and desperate man. My wife is far more angry and needing engagement. It looks like we're not doing well, but the fact is, oh, we're doing so much better than merely being able to get along. I think that's when we begin to go, redemption is about us becoming who we are meant to be, not who we suffice ourselves to be just to be able to get along.
Hmm. It's so important for the listeners to hear your story with your parents was different than Steve's story with his. And therefore, what you are looking for in a partner and what your heart and body is needing is different. Everyone has a unique story. There is no methodology here. What there is narrative. And we, the three of us, are evangelists for people to know their narrative. Why? Because it will make sense of your life. And it will, in this context, help make sense of your marriage, which for even the best marriages is filled with heartache. I think that's an uncontroversial sentence.
You do? You really do? I think for a lot of people, they go, oh, I'm so sorry, Adam.
Chapter 14. The title is Blessing, Not Cursing. What do you mean by those two words, and how does this play out in our marriages, Dan?
Well, I think of it as the beginning of vows. I mean, one of the first times I heard Steve teach on marriage, he was talking about vows, and I'm like, "Yeah, I made vows. What's your point?" And as he developed the concept of you're making not merely a commitment, but you are literally giving to the other words to reflect who you want to be on their behalf and who you desire for both of you to become, it began to be clear to me that blessing is dreaming with blood to sacrifice, to see what you desire come to be. So, in that sense, blessing is not just, oh, you're wonderful. Yeah, you're such a sweetheart. Thank you so much. Again, I'm all for minimal potato chip compliments, but the bottom line being, blessing is I dream you not to be who I demand you to be, but I dream you to be the woman or man you are on behalf of living out what it means to be the face of God. Cursing is anything that not only brings contempt against the other, but actually fails to bring the very soil, the nutriments, the just the good things that will cause growth to occur. So our desire is not to trivialize the word blessing, but to see that all of our life is a form of blessing of what and who we are meant to become.
And as you're talking, Steve, I'm thinking back to what you said earlier about we need to be honest about the fact that we are image bearers of God to our partner.
Mm.
So in the context of blessing, Steve, and in with thinking back on we are image bearers. You are an image you are bearing the glory of God as you interact with Lisa. What gets stirred for you in the category of blessing and cursing, Steve?
Again, when you say those words, there's just something so fundamentally not overwhelming, but inviting about that phrase again. I hope we hear that phrase as an invitation. That when I am able to be the image of God on behalf of Lisa, there's nothing more profoundly beautiful than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think and that to me is the blessing that I think Dan is naming, you're naming, reflecting on. Where the curse comes in is when I am unable to be, for whatever reason, what Lisa needs. How do I make her pay or make myself pay? Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is for many couples, that's also part of what gets uprooted in some way, is the exposure to the reality that when Lisa can't be the image of God on my behalf, I can't be hers for whatever reason. How do we either make ourselves pay or the other pay? And I think that's a form of cursing that we have at times struggled with in our own marriage is I at times am not able to be what you need, Lisa, and same for her. Mm-hmm. But how do I hold kindness toward that? How is there blessing toward that? Mm-hmm. Rather than making her pay or making myself pay.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you one more thing, one more quote before we end, but just to remind the listeners, the title of this book is The Deep-Rooted Marriage. It's co-authored by both of you, Dan, Steve. Your spouses contribute chapters. It's coming out January 21st. You can pre-order it now anywhere books are sold. Here's the last thing I want to ask you. It's from the last chapter. I don't know who wrote it. Marriage is not merely a conflict between two people. It is a battle with every form of death that threatens to separate the couple. And then you rhetorically ask, what are we most wanting for you? The answer is simple. And here's the sentence that I would like you to speak to. Stay in the conflict until you need to care for your body and your fragmenting brain. What do you mean?
Well, Becky, probably about 6 months ago, said to me, "You expect to die before me." And I went, "Well, actuarial tables, yeah." And she said, "I would like you to start praying that you would see me home." And when she said that phrase, I can barely speak it without tears now. I remember looking at her going, "Oh my God, you are asking me to be a man. You are asking me to step up and see you home." I have prayed almost every day since that moment, and that is, give me breath, give me health, give me the ability to see my wife home. We're 72. We don't know how many more years either of us have on this earth. But that sense of we will stay in this conflict. And again, I believe when I see Jesus, I will become as he is. But I know whatever hours, days, weeks, months, years I have left on this earth, I can grow a whole lot more. And I want that to be true for me. I want that to be true for her. I want that to be true for our lives on behalf of our children, our grandchildren, our friends. So, in that sense, dreaming redemption invites us to begin to say, hell no. Hell no, I'm not going to eat as much sugar as I used to. Why? Well, it probably won't allow me to stay on this earth long enough to see my wife home. So there are things I'm choosing to do today, standing firm to see that dream come true. So when we begin to dream, not just like a better vacation, a nice time off, when we begin to dream redemption on behalf of one another, that's Steve's great phrase of being the face of God on behalf of one another. I think that's where there are moments where I can stay in it until I know, oh my gosh, I'm so angry right now. I am so hurt right now. I need to step away. Not for a season, but for a day, an hour, or whatever, to get my heart back to be able to come back into our relationship. So when you need to care for your body, when you need to care for your fragmenting brain, do so not as primary self-protection, but as provision to return to the dream that you have on behalf of one another.
Hmm. Steve, you get the honor of the final word. It can either be about this sentence of caring for our bodies and our fragmenting brain, or it can be about the deep-rooted marriage and your hope for it. That's how we opened. It's your pick.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for the invitation. And I was really struck by your words, Dan, of how you have again revealed the deep desire that you hold to honor your wife. And I would say that hopefully as the reader moves through the pages, that is part of what grows, is that there's compassion towards story and kindness towards story, but their desire to love well, their desire to stay present, their desire to be kind, not only again to their own story, but their spouse's story, and the ways in which it is revealed in their marriage dynamic. Again, that place of honor, it is meant to cultivate honor. And if we can invite one another into that, I think that's where the healing truly comes.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Steve Call, Dr. Dan Allender, thank you not just for coming on the podcast, but thank you for the labor of writing a book that is on behalf of the marriages of others flourishing. It's a deep need for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Adam, so grateful for you and your work and our conversation.
Can't wait to ski with you.